Greetings, I'm Vincent. Thanks for joining me for today's sessions. We are talking about the network security assessments as a services. For the network security assessment, usually we will integrate the two really similar and complement services. One is for the external penetration testing and or internal security assessment services, right? Below is a typical standard external penetration testing or internal security assessment service fixed deliverable as a standard. It will typically use from outside, that is from external, which will be more adept to apply the tool and technique which hacker will commonly use to penetrate the customer network from external. So usually the typical point of testing usually will be in the form of like the public library, the firewall, and the external router, or even the critical web application server, IP we're talking. The test will attempt to find out the exploitable vulnerability and identify them into the report and provide some suggestion how to code those vulnerabilities being identified in the report and suggestions. And then the survey will serve as the purpose of helping the customer to evaluate the vulnerability for the network component related to the system to potential attack, which may compromise the system integrity, confidentiality, and availability, or commonly we call here CIA. Also to identify any bug on the network against the network security breach. If done from outside, it is external oriented, or is done from inside, it is internal oriented, it means your insider job. So granted the data for service delivery, of course, is subject to upfront confirmation and require official letter of authorizations and permission to sort out from partner if we have a partner engagement in these cases, and then with the customer and or other party involved in upfront risk. And then the scope of work is carried out based on the given one external or internal accessible IP and at least one set of credentials to cover target scanning system. Credential is for internal security assessment and so on, depending on the scope we are talking. Key way to explain about the network assessment service as a service, as we have a lot of services. We have a web application, wireless, database as a services, but this one we are focusing on network security assessment. So here you can very visually to see so that from external penetration testing, option usually is perform the external pen test from outside to one IP or to multiple IP with or without the credential detail on your case in hands, right? That will be tested through the router, the firewall, and then for the critical application server and so on. Another typical scenario also is based on the perform the internal security assessment test from inside to one IP or multiple IP with or without credential also. So this is typically for the internal security assessment and external penetration testing, right? It will depend on the scenario. Some you may want us to start from external, then to internal, or to internal, then external. It depends on the scope and requirement of the particular project in hand. Standard service deliverable we are talking about, of course, is to evaluate the possibility of an attack on the network and system, which may compromise the system integrity, confidentiality, and availability. For these cases we are talking is referred to the network, server, and system intent to test. Company use the industry standard security and vulnerability assessment tool and the penetration tool as well, which may include those employed by the hacker. Company will perform the service during the scanning time and general report to summarizing all the vulnerability found and recommendation report. For web applications or application and database security is not scope of this network security assessment from the scope of subscribe service. However, the partner and the customer, you can always subscribe together to perform more end-to-end, the comprehensive penetration testing and security assessment. So you may discuss it before, during, or after the service delivery as additional complementary service subscriptions from there. Vulnerability fixing, mitigation, module development, and system hardening is not the scope of a subscribe service because this is for network security assessments. However, the partner and customer, you can always discuss it before, during, and after the service delivery as additional complementary service subscription as well. The value of propositions from how each being the partner and end customer come into the pictures. From the reseller partner, when that they don't foresee the network security assessment and the data service is the core business for them, or what they call it as a no core. So, but they may have a customer required to be served, need partially of the services, or you need to have a third party auditing, maybe because you deliver, let's say, like a firewall to the customer. You need a third party to complement your services, to audit it as a third party, to have a neutral and the third party independent view or the regarding for the audit, and then how well or the configuration of the firewall or the other project or web application and so on, right? So you may need it from the service provider like HP to provide this as to complement your core business from there, right? From the end customer point of view, well, may we have the need to have the IT infrastructure, network, server assessment, but sometimes if you need to invest in subsequently on the CapEx, the capital expenditures, you will find that, well, just a years, I just need it once time or one off for a project. It may not be that viable to invest in all kind of the tool, and then you invest in your people and the experience on that. Your baseline that you may consider is from each team, we were very in terms of making it simple, to make it as a solution to address for your real operation requirement as a service and hassle free from there. From us, our business model is simple. To be engaged with the, this is in particular popular move when the time for the reseller partner or SI get in deploying some of the project equipment and system, you need the party check, right? So this is another place where it's been coming into the pictures. And a quick summary of the methodology and the approach as a process. Depending on how it goes, I will start to say about security policy and guidelines. We may start the project, start from the standard security assessment methodology, the customer company or industry guideline, like banking guidelines, and the customer security policy, especially we are talking about the multinational corporations, or you have a regional compliance policy and so on. Compliant to the customer on regulatory requirement, for instance, for the PCI, for SOC, for HMPAA, and so on. Right? You want someone to look into it and start from there to do the work, right? So, internal security assessment and external penetration testing, some will start from here, the policy, then external penetration testing, then to internal security assessment. For one, it is just fine because we also can do it from inside out or outside in, right? So we talk about here first the internal security assessment. We talk about the local area network, the IP vulnerability for IP-enabled system and device. We talk about Windows, Unix, Linux workstation, and critical vision server. The network equipment, for instance, the switch, the router, firewall, wireless AP, load balancer, and so on. And then for the external pen test, we talk about to conduct outside internal body of the customer network to discover how much of the internal securities are exposed to the public and to the external hacker. Then, of course, in that time we have the two assessment, one from external, one internal. Then, of course, we will be able to provide the security recommendations. We talk about based on the result of the actual security assessment and client network design, security policy enforcement, advisable to the minimizing the known and controllable risk. And then, of course, it depends. Some customers were looking for ongoing security audit, ongoing from the proactive PNT security audit to ensure security and vulnerability control in order. Right? This is the circle and the process typically an approach. Depend on your case. Maybe you just need someone to look into the policy. You just need to done internal security assessment, external pen test, recommendation on ongoing for the compliant check and so on. Technical scope of the external penetration testing and or internal security assessment. So we will summarize in the key table here for the typical service scope in easy to understand manner to complete with the full infra security assessment services. Study on relevant security policy guidelines, so on the customer environment. So from this, it typically no inclusive for the pure pen test or internal security assessment service subscription. However, the customer may only top up and subscribe for the additional service for this. Internal security assessment cover the scope of the network device, equipment, system, server, system, and the operating system, right? Not inclusive for pure external penetration testing services, inclusive for internal security assessment subscription. However, the customer may always top up or subscribe for additional service for this. Third, external or internal application security assessment, penetration testing cover the scope, web/the application server and database server. Not inclusive for pure external pen testing services or the internal security assessment services subscription. However, customer may only top up and subscribe for the additional service for this. So this one, for example, in the typical one is the web application testing, right? That you may need to add in from your particular scope of the project. And then for the core, we're talking about the server and system log review. No inclusive for pure external penetration testing or internal security assessment services subscription. However, as usual, you may top up and subscribe for the additional service for this. We continue on the quick table. First, we're talking about the wire and the wireless, the network packet capture and analysis. So, no inclusive for pure external penetration testing or internal security assessment services. However, just like the past few months, you may always add on this if you feel this is something you want to do, to sniffing and perform the packet analyzing and so on, right, within your network. Six, the binary reverse engineering and malware analysis are not inclusive for pure external penetration testing or internal security assessment. However, as usual, this thing you may add in as per needed for us to perform this MARE, we call it malware analysis and reverse engineering. Seven is talk about the external penetration testing, inclusive if count as one-time service delivery. That is, you typically is about 3 vendor services for per IP event without the credentials. And then for 8, security assessment and recommendation report. Typically for network security assessment is inclusive as part of the report deliverable with security assessment and security recommendation report. Study on relevant security policy guidelines services if subscribed for this thing here, what is inside. So the task will be involve study for all the relevant policy and guidelines to create a security assessment checklist This is outline, not a retail technical checklist based on the combination of following, for instance, the standard security assessment methodology, the customer, company or industry guideline, and then for the customer security policy. So security assessment will be conducted such as this all areas in the checklist are covered in compliance to the customer and regulatory requirements. Internal security assessment cover the network equipment, device and system, server and system OS if subscribed. So from this internal security assessment is conducted within the customer local area network to identify the vulnerability of IP-enabled network node. So the IP node can be any IP-enabled system or device. Typically we talk about the Windows-based server and workstation, Unix or Linux server and workstation, switch, router, firewall, access server, and wireless access point, right? Except proprietary or legacy systems such as mainframe, AS400, etc. Security assessment will only be conducted over the network using the proven assessment methodology and tool. No system level assessment will be conducted. The test vulnerability will include such as OS vulnerability, TCP/IP protocol vulnerability, common application protocol, HTTP, FTP, SMTP, SMMP, etc. vulnerability, buffer overflow vulnerability, network-enabled backdoor and trojans, and then the vulnerability in popular applications such as Microsoft, the IIS, the web server, Microsoft Exchange email server, Lotus Note, etc. And then the weak system configuration result in vulnerable explosion indeed. The comprehensive internal security assessment include eval of the control in the best practice and include following elements: architecture review, policy review, network host database testing, the technical control review, firewall router, AV IPS configuration review, the wireless testing, the modem testing, and then voice over IP assessment, virtual server security testing, social engineering, physical security testing, or any mixing of that. The following element will be reviewed if available for or fall under the scope of work: the documentation review, the log review, the rule set review, the system configuration review, the network sniffing, and the file integrity checking. For the exam, the scope of work inclusive in the delivery, so you may refer to the support statement of work attached together with the quotations or the services. Following process and activity will take place if fall under scope of work. We talk about the targets identification and analysis, network discovery, and the network port and service identifications, vulnerability scanning, wireless scanning, passive and active wireless scanning, wireless device location tracking, and Bluetooth scanning, target vulnerability verification, password hacking, penetration testing, social engineering. For external penetration testing, will be conducted outside the internet body of the client network, typically for espin offices or specific location gate client authorizations. So an external assessment will help to discover the exposure of the customer network to the internet. It will also provide information on how much of the internal security risks are exposed to the public. Network system policy process security recommendation will be provided based on the following: the study on the customer network design, result of the security assessment, retail recommendation to reduce the risk recommendation and mitigation recommendations. Technical recommendation will not be provided to advise the customer on best practice to improve the network system policy process security procedures. Right? So technical advice will be given as well as part of the report. Statement of scope of services SOW. So scope of work and responsibility for the IT security assessment service will be set as the following. So each team will perform the services security assessment on the customer network using proven penetration testing methodology. And 2, scope of assessment is strictly limited to IP-enabled system, and you want it as a fixed scope of work. The assessment will be conducted during normal business hour, usually either we mentioned about 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on weekday, or special authorization and arrangement required for no business day and hour testing and assessment. ESP will then analyzing the security assessment result and submit a report cover all the security assessment service equivalent, and then will provide the network system policy and process security recommendation for the remedial actions for this cover vulnerability, as well as to include the general security best practice for the item covered within the scope of work only. Out of the scope, we are talking that there's no include in this proposal implementation of the mitigation measure and recommendation unless additional services is subscribed with additional services fee involved. System reconfiguration, fine-tuning, patching, etc. except also unless it's subscribed as additional services. And then for the security hardening, vulnerability fixing, and mitigation motive development, security consulting unless additional service is subscribed on top. Typical deliverable on the services is, for instance, the one is the penetration testing and internet security assessment in as subscribed according to the scope of work is usually from ad hoc or fixed project is one time, and then for security recommendation report is also one time, right? Report will submit typically will around 5 business days from the date of completion of this exercise, and in 2 sets of pin copy, 1 set for end client, 1 set for ESP filing. When the time they invoke from the reseller partner, then 3 sets will be PD and be distributed. Customer responsibility, if it is expected of the customer to fulfill the following responsibility during the course of the project, the customer shall ensure the network server and system to be accessed is out and operation throughout the penetration testing or security assessment exercise. All server and network device to be accessed shall be powered up and operation when the assessment is conducted. Customer shall provide ESP personnel with access to its internet network and or server, typically at internet network port connect to the same network segment as the server farm for internet security assessment. For the customer shall finish a list of a system and device to be accessed. Optional, so the customer shall provide all the required log to ESP in a timely manner or outsource to ESP. So the customer shall ensure that logging is enabled on the relevant system. From a quick and visual understanding, in summarize, usually from the time for the engagement of the service or first thing first, together is we need a letter of authorization to have giving us a specific permission at which day and what time that ESP is allowed to perform the services. Then from the summary from the survey usually is the penetration testing report. And then of course that we will create the visual, we compute based on the whole entire scope of work from the risk according to the risk metric, and then to prioritize accordingly, and then sorting out the report. From there, we'll present during the time and distribute on the presentation regarding for the security farming and recommendations. Thanks for joining me on the sections. I hope the section provide you with all the information required. If not, feel free to search our website, www.e-espincorp.com. We have a lot of information related to the respective services. And of course, if you have some project in hand that you want to explore for how to working on that, feel free to contact us. So we may be based on what you have and then the way the engagement you needed to provide you.